Got the blueprint, study my movement. More than the 2 cents. Was losing, now I'm oozing with success. Now I got the tools to beat the stress.
Welcome to Mick 3 Count Commentaries from October 24th, 2022. Alright, so no news and notes, not anything really. So we're going to be talking about Raw, which was a filler episode of Monday Night Raw, a boring episode of Monday Night Raw. They did set up some things, but overall, nothing major. I did see a lot of people absolutely flip their lid over how boring Raw was, which was funny because so many people are so used to Triple H with the big surprises and this and that, and then the big quote unquote surprise for this episode wasn't quite as major as other people think it should be. Therefore, they crapped all over the show. I think that the show was just boring because they didn't really feature any of the stars. They didn't have any stars on this show. That's why I called it a filler episode. You know, they had some lower to mid card people who had a lot of time on the show, but no major mainstream box office guys did anything. So that's the problem. Now, speaking of the sort of middling, middle B card guys, Judgment Day. They came out first. They seem to be starting a lot of Raw, so that's okay. Finn Balor said that AJ Styles crumbled under the pressure facing the legendary Dominik Mysterio. So they started pushing really the Dominik heat. They started pushing that heavily. It almost came across as Dominik was being the leader of the Judgment Day to the point where they really talked up Dominik. There was a lot of Dominik. Damian Priest called him the greatest luchador in the business. And Dominik says that Judgment Day were the only people that ever believed in him, that he proved his doubters and haters wrong, and that he's this generation's Eddie Guerrero, which got a ton of heat. Even on Twitter, he got a ton of heat. Then he corrected himself by saying that, no, Eddie Guerrero was his generation's Dominik Mysterio. which was great. I'm loving the pure hatred everybody has for Dominik. Because, again, Dominik is not particularly good at anything, and that's part of the hate, is that he's not particularly good at anything. He's not a great promo. He's not a great worker. But he gets a lot of fucking heat. It's just, it is what it is. Anyway, the OC came out. AJ Styles calls Dominik Mysterio this generation's James Ellsworth, which I think probably went over some people's heads. You have to be a certain age to know about the James Ellsworth AJ Styles shenanigans, which absolutely infuriated me as it went on. Vince McMahon's obsession with weird looking characters, that boy oh boy, that bothered me to no end. That James Ellsworth was such a huge part of the show for, I don't know, what was it, like a year maybe? He had teamed up with Carmella, and he was hanging out with her a lot. He was an integral part of her being the SmackDown Women's Champion. He even had his own little mini feud with AJ Styles. It was horrible. It was horrible. He was featured way too much on SmackDown because Vince thought it was funny. It was no different than when Zach Gowen, you know, he got a Zach Gowen-like run in WWE where Vince wanted to use the Freaks for a little while. The guy's only trait was his lack of chin. Like, that was it. He was there so they can make chin jokes every week. And somehow ended up turning that into basically a career, that he looks funny. And Vince thought that he looked funny. It's one of the most generous acts of charity Vince McMahon ever did, was actually put James Ellsworth on TV. I really would have tried to put Vince in a blender at this point in time. If you talk about pushing Vince out of power at any point in time, I think when he started pushing James Ellsworth onto the people, that was about the time when you start, locking him in his room or giving him, the wrong directions to the production meetings and all this kind of stuff. We just kind of go around him at that point, like sometimes when an artist is not doing too good, commercially but they still have name value and their performance level is starting to dip, you start having the producers come in and they produce around the artist, and the artist doesn't have to do that much. They just produce around them. It's kind of like a aging football player. You put some people around them to make them not seem so bad. This was around that time when you really had to do that for Vince, because James Ellsworth was one of the single most embarrassing projects WWE ever put together. And it was all just, he's a funny looking guy. He's ill built. This would be great. And I don't agree. I don't agree. He got far more TV time and far more of a push than people who had infinitely more talent. I mean, if you look at the James Ellsworth run in WWE and then compare it to some people who, even in recent years, he had more of a run than Keith Lee did. You know, even though Keith Lee beat Randy Orton and, you know, and well, that's pretty much all he did on the main roster. He did some big stuff in NXT, but he didn't do nothing on the main roster. James Ellsworth had a better run than Karrion Kross's first run, because Karrion Kross lost his first match, even though he looks like the way he looks. It's so embarrassing when you think about it from that perspective. But of course, he was in and out because he was a weird looking guy. And that's it was a freak show factor. But, James Ellsworth, Jesus Christ. Anyway, let's move on. Carl Anderson said that it's time for him to remind people that he's the toughest guy in the building and wanted to get his match with Finn Balor on right now. Okay. During this time, they had the match. Match was solid enough. It wasn't that long either. Rhea Ripley actually slammed Luke Gallows during this match, which was impressive for me. I was legitimately impressed. Of course, it began the calls for intergender matches, and I'm not with that. I ain't with intergender matches. I saw some people say, oh, she can body slam Luke Gallows. We should be having intergender matches. I'm like, well, for starters, not every woman is the size of Rhea Ripley. And so let's not get it twisted. The Alexa Bliss Randy Orton thing was a joke, and everybody knew that. But Alexa Bliss is a little smaller than the average woman. But a lot of these women are very short and very small. Most of them are not in any competition for a full-size man. You know, it may look good to have Rhea Ripley stand next to Finn Balor, who is a little bit of a mini man. Same thing with Rey Mysterio. But when you start talking about we're going to have intergender matches, now you're asking me to believe that somebody who looks like a child standing next to Charlotte is somehow competition for Drew McIntyre. And it's like, no, that's not. We're not going that route. And besides, WWE wasn't doing it anyway due to all of these sponsorships and the network and all that kind of stuff. They probably wouldn't do it anyway. So in any event, Rhea Ripley hit Carl Anderson in the nuts. Finn Balor wins the match. Fine. Whatever. I know that Carl Anderson is in the middle of a thing right now where it's this tug of war between New Japan and WWE. Carl Anderson says that he's double booked and he'll defend the title at the never open weight championship, whatever the fuck belt that is. He's going to defend the belt, but he's not going to defend the belt the same day in Saudi Arabia. He's going to defend it some other time. While New Japan seems to think that he will make it, I don't think New Japan really understands what's going on here. I'm not sure. I know they haven't had dealings with WWE in a while. They probably need to realize you might want to make that decision to pull that title now rather than, leading people to believe that he's going to be there at that show, because he ain't going to be there. He's probably going to make twice what he makes at Saudi Arabia than makes at whatever New Japan show this is, because it's not the Tokyo Dome. At least I don't think so. Now, I know in the long term, if Carl Anderson was to get fired again, he would have to go running back to New Japan. So maybe he should consider how he treats them. But at the same time, he's not going to skip a Saudi paycheck to go wrestle in New Japan against fucking Hikuleo. Trust me. So New Japan was smart. They would emergency book for him to lose the title at whatever next show they got while they can. Or just strip him of the belt immediately and not to concern themselves with it too much more. That's what I would do, personally. As soon as they announced that he's going to be somewhere in a different country, on not exactly the other side of the world, but in the middle of the world, which he ain't nowhere near Japan, on November the 5th, I would have just said, title is vacant. We'll do something else, But I don't run New Japan, so you got to think about what you're doing here. All right, so later in the show, the OC were upset that they got a Rhea Ripley problem. AJ Styles talked about Gallows getting body slammed, and Gallows said body slams are his love language, and he promised that he would handle the Rhea Ripley situation, which of course leads us to think that there's going to be a female member of the OC or a female being introduced to counteract Rhea Ripley in this story. So there's been a lot of people being pitched, like, who could it possibly be that's going to be the one that's going to come in and handle Rhea Ripley? And that's a good question, because I've been sitting here thinking, and I can't think of anybody. I legit can't think of anybody WWE has on the roster that they could bring in that could feud with Rhea Ripley. I can't even think of anybody that they would even have in terms of a legend that they could call to bring in and handle Rhea Ripley, unless it would be like Lita. Like, I guess, could it be Lita? Because it is going to probably be a Saudi match, because Judgment Day versus the OC is 6-man tag. So they're probably going to call in the woman to have Rhea Ripley have a match at Saudi in Crown Jewel. So I guess that could be Lita. They never went the Beth Phoenix route when it came to the Edge feud. Or maybe they will go Beth Phoenix. Who knows? But Luke Gallows says that they're going to have an answer to the Rhea Ripley question. Is it possible that it could be Doudrop? Especially since we know what's going on with Nikki. Nikki and Doudrop seem to be doing their own thing again, which is fine. I guess we'll talk about that in a minute. But they promised that they were going to have a counteract for Rhea Ripley, but I can't see anybody physically being a challenge for her. So I don't know. So I pretty much am open to the surprise or disappointment, whichever one it's going to be. All right. The Miz and Johnny Gargano. Johnny Gargano keeps saying that the Miz should tell the truth. The Miz doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. And then says that Johnny Gargano is trying to use his name for clickbait, just like all these other wrestling websites. Then he went to the ring and said that he's going to reveal the facts. He's going to reveal all the facts, but first, he's going to talk about why Dexter targeted him. It said that Dexter targeted him because he chose Ciampa as his protege over Dexter Lumis, and Lumis decided to get revenge on him because and attacked his best friend Ciampa, who he hasn't seen in weeks. Johnny Gargano came out there, just Jesus Christ, Johnny Gargano. Anyway, Johnny Gargano says that Ciampa is injured, which Miz would know that if that was truly his best friend. And then R-Truth came out. R-Truth appeared. R-Truth came out and said that, for starters, he did the entire song of What's Up, which is usually rare. It's rare that you even get this much of the What's Up lyrics. But I guess since he's been gone for so long, people were kind of like, well, let him have his moment. So since Miz said he was going to tell the truth, there he is. Tell the truth. What you got to tell the truth? The Miz gets into it with R-Truth. This is Charlotte, North Carolina, which is Truth's hometown. Truth was fixated on macaroni and cheese, said, "You're not going to be dissing on macaroni and cheese." Oh, I'm like, macaroni and cheese? Like, that's all you guys eat in Charlotte? Anyway, Truth actually challenged a man to a match, which is weird. So we got R-Truth versus The Miz, which R-Truth won with a distraction roll up because Johnny Gargano was wearing a hood in the crowd and distracted The Miz. I hate this. I hate this. Which was really weird because the storytelling for the match was that The Miz was kind of dominant over R-Truth, which is fine, But R-Truth's still a physical marvel. He's in great shape. The guy's over 50. He's a gem. Glad he's still on TV. So I'm okay. I'm okay with R-Truth being there. R-Truth beating The Miz, I don't know. I don't understand why, but it was just a story filler thing. Okay, so Miz was upset about Johnny Gargano dressing like Dexter Lumis. Didn't like that too much. Johnny Gargano promised to blow the whistle if The Miz doesn't tell the truth. While he's walking down the hallway, Johnny Gargano runs into JBL, who lectures him on locker room etiquette, and said that this was the attitude era, you'd be carrying my bags. And says that Corbin didn't spend 10 years in the minors. Johnny Gargano tried to shake JBL's hand, but also mocked his pants, and he was wearing MC Hammer pants last week. And then said he would introduce himself to Baron Corbin, but he's not sure what his name is this week because he's changed his name so many times. This led to JBL challenging Johnny Gargano to a match, even though Baron Corbin was going to be the one that's going to wrestle the match. And then this match would happen later. We got the epic JBL two-step for his entrance, which I always loved that. I'm a big JBL mark. I always loved the JBL two-step. It was hilarious. Anyway, he doesn't care about Charlotte because they created today's mediocrity is the norm, and said that even in Charlotte, Michael Jordan, the great Michael Jordan, is a loser. And this is where dreams come to die, which was excellent. He talked about today's safe space, ambitionless society. It was all on the commentary too. JBL really kind of going hard here on the safe space generation. So I know people are eventually going to start bitching about it, but it's true. It's true. Having no ambition, which is a fact. That's a big problem with wrestling, is having people with no ambition. People with too much ambition and people with no ambition. Both of those things are absolutely worthless to the wrestling business. People who are perfectly happy being undercard guys, jobbers, stuff like that. I don't know why you would be doing that. I guess if you're getting paid well enough, it would be okay. And people who, no matter what you do for them, it's never enough. The Sasha Banks, the CM Punks, those people who are just never content. There is a good thing about not ever being content, because you keep pushing yourself forward, you keep challenging, you want more. But eventually you do hit a ceiling to where there's nothing more for them to do for you, and you want more and more and more. So, but there's no more to be had, So there is a point there, or there's more to be had, but you just can't perform on that level. That would be a CM Punk thing, where sure, there's a WrestleMania main event for you, but not at this point in time. I mean, look at who's at the top at this point. Now, if they were to, let's say, sign CM Punk today, I think he probably would get a WrestleMania main event, just to give him a smiley face sticker, a gold sticker at the end of his career, and to call it a day. But back when he was complaining about that and kind of upset about it, it wasn't going to happen for him. It's just they didn't see him in that way, and he wasn't producing on that level. So. And similarly with Sasha Banks, who, wants to be girl Roman Reigns, and she hasn't shown Roman Reigns' range in terms of character and promo and that kind of thing. She just didn't show it. So she didn't get that push, even though she did kind of finagle her way into a WrestleMania main event. So it was just kind of like, you could have too much ambition. That's a problem. That's actually quite toxic. It's actually more toxic than not having enough ambition. Because if you have too much ambition, you just come across as an asshole. Because there's going to be far more people who are, looking like, if I could have gotten a quarter of what you got, I'd be good. So there's just one way of looking at things. But JBL is going to eventually start getting some heat. People have started calling him the Dan Lambert of WWE. Okay, I'll take that, because Dan Lambert had a good point. The only problem, and it's unfortunate, but just like Dan Lambert, he's stuck with somebody who nobody cares about. Like, nobody really cares about Baron Corbin. It's unfortunate, but especially dressing the way that he dresses, and Corbin's never going to be. I don't know. He's never going to be a top level main event guy. He's never going to be that guy. He hasn't won a championship in years for a reason. He's a solid gatekeeper heel, and that's pretty much his ceiling, but he's had a decent career for himself. I think he's definitely going to be one of those guys in the Performance Center, helping train people, from his days in the Performance Center, but he's never going to be like a WrestleMania main event guy. He's never going to be world champion. I don't think that'll ever occur. Even though JBL is really putting him over, like, that's what he is. He's a future world champion. Now, on commentary, they discussed why JBL is hanging out with Baron Corbin. To which JBL says that greatness befriends greatness. and that he looks at Baron Corbin and sees everything good about this business. He's a throwback to a better day, while Johnny Gargano represents sort of the 10-year odyssey in the minor leagues. And he even trying to puts over Johnny Gargano a little bit by saying that Johnny Gargano is great, but he's not Baron Corbin or something like that. Meanwhile, Johnny Gargano was putting on JBL's hat, and I was just kind of, I wanted to choke him through my screen. That's like, of all the things JBL said that to get heat, nothing gets more heat with me than Johnny Gargano merely existing. Just him being there just makes me want to swat him in the back of the head like a little boy or something like that. After he mocked JBL, JBL tripped him, end of days. Baron Corbin wins. This match is entirely too long. Triple H has got to know Johnny Gargano is not over enough for you to be giving him matches this long. Come on, brother. Especially with this finish. You could have did this finish 10 minutes prior before this fucking match ended. Come on. You know, just, dude. After the match, the Miz ran into Johnny Gargano. Miz wanted to talk. Johnny Gargano said that Miz needs to tell the truth or he will tell the truth next week. I really don't care about the truth anymore. So I really don't care why Dexter Lumis is bothering the Miz. It's just unfortunate that this is, you know, how we're choosing to do this thing. At one point, Johnny Gargano, I guess when he was marching along backstage, he was going to check on his wife. And he's going to check on his wife because she got beat up by Damage Control. So there was a sit down for Candice LeRae backstage who talked about the roller coaster that she's been on and knew it was going to be a challenge, but many of the wrestlers, superstars, have supported her. She mentioned the three that are not mentioned, not on TV right now: Alexa Bliss, Asuka, and Bianca. Well, Bianca wrestled in the main event, but the other two have been on TV in weeks. So she got confronted by Bayley and Damage Control. She said that you don't see your little support system because we put them on the shelf. Candice LeRae said that you're only proving that Dakota Kai is still untrustworthy. Io Sky is still untrustworthy. Dakota Kai is still spiteful, and Bayley is still not Raw Women's Champion. To which Bayley says, "I'm not Raw Women's Champion yet." And then they jumped her and beat her up. All right, whatever. This kind of leads to the main event, Bianca Belair versus Bayley. But Bianca Belair had a promo earlier in the night by saying she's trying to end this, and that she's going to, if she means she has to take out Dakota and Io at the same time, in order to get to Bayley, she will do it. That this feud is bigger than the title because Damage Control keeps attacking her friends, but she's not going to stop at nothing to get Bayley. All right, so they had the main event, which was a solid main event, pretty lengthy, probably a little too long. I was wondering why it was non-title, especially considering the finish. Why was it non-title? Anyway, Bianca's transition to Trunks has been welcome. Thank you very much for transitioning to Trunks, being a good role model to Bayley, who refuses to do it and is being a tease. Anyway, they had some pretty good spots. The Bayley to belly from the top, the suplex on the floor. It was pretty nice. Out of nowhere, Damage Control got double cross-bodied. Well, triple cross-bodied because the referee was out there too. Nobody knew what that flying missile was at first. And then she attacked Bianca Belair. And that's when everybody realized it was Nikki Cross. I guess she's going by Nikki Cross now. A second referee came down to the ring after she hit, I think, the Pittsburgh Plunge, which was the sort of cradle neck breaker that Shane Douglas did. That was one of his finishers before he moved to the belly to belly. That's just kind of how I know it. I just kind of know it as the Pittsburgh Plunge. Anyway, she hit that move on Bianca Belair. Bayley took advantage of it to get the pin. So you pin the Raw Women's Champion. Stupid. But I guess Bayley had to win eventually. Then Nikki Cross attacked Bayley after the match. So it's not looking like she's joining Damage Control. It looks like she attacked both. She attacked Damage Control first, and then she attacked Bianca. Her attack was not very exciting. she wasn't really all that over. So people were not that interested in what she was doing. And it looked like more like a tantrum, not a violent assault. So especially when she was attacking Bayley, she was just kind of flailing her arms, and there was like no precision in the strikes. There was also the wild Nikki Cross, with the hair pulling and the eye gouging. It was sort of a more mature version of the Nikki Cross from NXT. And she looked like she was in a band or something like that. It just had a generic rock chick look. So I was like, oh, okay, sure. Not the finish I would have gone with for this night. It would have been fine if it was the first match. If this match wasn't so long, and if this match wasn't hopefully this wasn't to blow off the feud between Bianca and Bayley, even though I also kind of want this feud to end. But it can't be over considering Bayley pinned Bianca again for the second time. So, but also now we got Nikki, who seems to be a loose cannon in this situation. So, I'm not sure where we're going with this. I did see some criticisms of the Nikki Cross thing by people saying that she's going backwards. That seems to be a Triple H thing, where he's kind of going back to what's known as the last known good. It's a simple situation where if something breaks, something doesn't work anymore. What was the last time you saw it working? What was the last thing? What was the last day? What was the state of situations that made that thing work? It's called the last known good. And the last time Nikki Cross was any good, she was kind of a wild, that the member of Sanity, Nikki Cross. Even though I think she was actually pretty good as Alexa Bliss's sidekick. I think she was pretty good there too. But it seems like Triple H is just putting people back in certain packages, going back to LA Knight, going back to Elias, going back to Nikki Cross, not Nikki Ash. Even though Nikki Ash, I'm glad that's gone. I'm glad Max Dupree is gone too. Getting rid of T-Bar, there's nothing you could do with Donovan Dijakovic that's going to be any good. So if you're talking about last known good, WWE was better off before he joined. So, I think him being on the outside, maybe send him to AEW, I think that would be a great thing. Maybe you should sign him to a new contract and then sell it to Tony Khan. That would be great. Like, we're going to sign you, 5-year deal, $10 million, and then sell it to Tony Khan for whatever. I'm pretty sure he'll be grateful to take this fucking guy, considering he's got a PWG and ROH heritage and all that kind of shit. He'll take him right off of your hands. I don't care at all about Donovan Dijakovic. But this is just a Triple H pattern that, he's trying to figure out when the last time these people were interesting, when the last time people cared about them, and trying to go back to that. But it is what it is. I don't think Nikki Cross was a big enough star to close this show. And I think they kind of fucked her over by putting her in this position. She interfered in a big match that had it didn't have any stakes to it, but it was still a big match that they had built up all night. And that between two people that, the crowd are interested in, So putting her in this situation was kind of unfair, but it is what it is. I ain't going to complain about it too much, so Nikki's back. I know some people are happy. I'm just kind of like mid, I liked wild and crazy Nikki Cross, but this ain't wild and crazy Nikki Cross, and she didn't look dangerous here. She looked like she was throwing a tantrum, like a drunk chick in a bar fight, but I don't know. Let's move on. Elias and Riddle hanging out backstage. Riddle was working on his rhymes for some reason. I don't know why Riddle is falling off a cliff now that he's now hanging out with Elias. Elias said he took a vow not to stand for disrespect, which means all the interruptions. Then he got interrupted by Alpha Academy, who made fun of him and said that he was pretending to be Ezekiel, which upset Elias because he takes his brother's career very seriously. So they ended up having a match between Elias and Chad Gable. There was only one good spot in this match where Elias hit that knee, which was a counter to that moonsault, which was great. Elias ended up winning the match, and then got jumped from behind by Otis, and then Riddle made the save. I couldn't have cared less about any of this, and it went on too long. I can't. I don't understand. I don't understand it. What do we bring Elias back for? I don't know. It seems like they're teasing Elias going back heel, but we got a lot of Alpha Academy on this show. I mean, that's one of those things that Triple H has been using a lot. He's been using Alpha Academy a lot, which I guess is his cup of tea. I'm not against Alpha Academy, don't get me wrong, but I just don't see why they're the favorite tag team that we're going to use like every single week. We're going to use Alpha Academy in some way. I don't know. I don't know. I just don't know. All right, Amos defeated 4 Jabarellos. Who cares? Austin Theory defeated Mustafa Ali, so he won a match finally. But it's against Mustafa Ali, who also never wins. Austin Theory says that we're wasting precious TV time on Mustafa Ali, who needs to be more like him. And of course, Seth Rollins came out there too. The match itself was fine. Theory versus Ali. But the crowd did not care. The crowd didn't care about most of this stuff because, again, none of these people are stars. And most of them, if you actually look at how they've been portrayed over the last couple of weeks, most of them have not been portrayed very good. So the crowd just was waiting and waiting and waiting for something to happen that never happened. And anyway, a star actually did come out in Seth Rollins, who, he was on commentary. I like his critique of Mustafa Ali. Mustafa? Is it Mustafa? Mustafa. I think that's what it was. Mustafa. Anyway, he claimed Ali had no killer instinct, which I think is pretty good. So, Rollins ended up distracting the referee, which helped Austin Theory, who won the match. It was a solid enough match. Theory finally won, but Ali, if he's in the championship chase, he probably shouldn't be losing this much. But who cares at this point, right? Like, who really cares? After the match, Seth Rollins seemed to be buddying up to Austin Theory, who has grown this great beard. Austin Theory's beard makes him look a little bit older, which is cool. He beat up Mustafa Ali, threw him all around outside, saying he doesn't belong to be in the ring with him, and said that he wanted him out of the WWE. He doesn't belong in his WWE. He then collected his United States title and was leaving when Mustafa Ali attacked him and kind of leapt from off screen onto Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins started to flee, and then he says he's not going anywhere. He's going to be Seth Rollins' problem. Boy. It's the old Raw booking. It's the old Raw booking. You got a guy in a championship situation, but he keeps losing. So that means he's not over. He's also not really cutting promos or trying to get endearing himself to the crowd at all. I'm not sure we got anything with Ali. I get why they keep putting him in this position. I get why they keep pushing him. I get why they see something in him. He's a great athlete. But this is his 3rd or 4th merry-go-round in terms of coming out of the woodwork, getting a push. Remember, he had that nice little push against Randy Orton. Then he caught that RKO, and that was it. The great thing he did at that point in time when he countered the RKO by doing a kind of a handspring. How about that? Was pretty cool. This was after his initial push when he beat Bryan Danielson, when he came straight off of 205 Live. So, of course, there's this great myth that he was supposed to wrestle Bryan Danielson at WrestleMania, but ended up going to Kofi because he ended up getting injured. And they just kept going for the last, 3 or 4 years. They keep going back to Ali. He goes off TV. He comes back rejuvenated. He goes off TV. He comes back rejuvenated. And each time, he just basically loses a bunch of fucking matches. But talks a good game. But I think that Retribution was kind of it. Like, after Retribution didn't work, we were just kind of like, we really should have just pulled the plug and fired all of those people, especially, like all of them should have been gone. But here they are, once again, trying to get some juice out of this Mustafa Ali thing. I don't know what it is, why he keeps getting chances, especially considering he's never really broken through. It was never a point in time where Mustafa Ali was like one of the most over guys on the roster. It was never the case. He was never a superstar. He was never huge. He was never important. Like, it would be one thing if they have fumbled the bag on like Rusev Day and they was trying to get him back to that level or something like that. But he wasn't even really that over. So why are we, punching so hard to get this fucking guy over again? It's just the good match fairy. He can have good matches. So that's what we're going to keep doing. We're going to keep pushing him. So, because he can have good matches. It's like, well, there's a ton of fucking guys who can have good matches, who could probably cut better promos and more likely get a babyface reaction or get some heat over Mustafa Ali, and especially if you're going to use him, not have him losing a lot might actually help. I mean, that's the one thing I would say AEW does very well. They protect people. They overprotect people, And so that's what makes people think that somebody like Jade Cargill is getting a really good push. It's like, well, she's super protected. She doesn't wrestle anybody that she shouldn't. She should be able to beat anybody on the roster, but they're not going to feed her everybody on the roster. So there's a certain level of performer she's not even going to go up against, which is overprotection of them too. So Mustafa Ali should be a guy who should be going out there and winning matches. But since they refuse to use job guys, unless they're wrestling Omos or fucking Braun Strowman, they refuse to use job guys, so he's not actually going to win the match. They've got some undercard people for him to beat, the Akira Tozawas and those kinds of guys. He could be wrestling those guys and winning, but they're not doing that. Or if you're going to bring him back, don't job him out. Just at least put him in feuds where he's cutting promos on Seth Rollins. Maybe Seth Rollins attacks him here and there, but overall he's in, this situation where he's not losing a lot. The same thing they're doing with Austin Theory. It's like, if you say that the guy's not ready, you want to make sure he gets some heat and all that kind of stuff, take him out of the ring. Instead of putting him in the ring, having him consistently lose, because then people just lose interest in him. Because it's like, okay, this guy's a fucking loser. Why am I watching this? Why do I care about this? Why do you expect me to react to this? That's the situation WWE finds themselves in with both Mustafa Ali and Austin Theory. Austin Theory had a tremendous amount of heat before Triple H took over. And he beat all the fucking heat out of him. And Ali, you had some, let's say, positive, what's the word I'm looking for? I want to say positive press, but whatever. It was positive that he was actually brought back and actually used in the United States Championship situation against Bobby Lashley or whatever. But then they just started to slowly but surely just job him out. And now it's like, okay, you put a bunch of guys out there that nobody cares about. They're not over. And you did it multiple times throughout this show. It's one thing to have, Finn Balor versus Carl Anderson. At least Finn Balor is part of a group that's over. Carl Anderson is fairly new. He hasn't been beaten to paste. So, well, he's fairly new in his return. Gallows and Anderson aren't great, but at least they haven't been beat to paste. Chad Gable's been beat to paste, and he's on this show. R-Truth hadn't been there forever, but The Miz has been treated like shit for weeks. Just looking at this roster, there's nobody that they featured outside of Bianca Belair that hasn't really lost within the last month. And I guess Baron Corbin, because he hadn't been there. Johnny Gargano, I believe, got beat not too long ago, too. And he's not over. So it's like, this show was just full of people who weren't really all that over, that weren't interesting, and they didn't do anything interesting with them. I was not sports entertained by this episode of Monday Night Raw. It was actually boring wrestler shit. And the matches were entirely too long, featuring people nobody cared about in spots that they probably shouldn't have even been in. So, I don't know. But I did like the vignette between Lashley and Lesnar. I thought that was great. But that's easy to get people excited for, because these are stars that are involved in this situation, and everybody's going to be interested in that. But where was Lashley on this show? He kind of won and beat up Brock, like I think it was last week, and he should have been out here talking about that. I don't know. Maybe some people got sick, maybe some people got hurt, maybe there's something else going on. But to run a Raw where Seth Rollins is the biggest star and he's on commentary, to run a Raw where your hottest act is Judgment Day and they're on in the first 30 minutes of the show and then not seen again, to run a Raw where you spent all this time getting over Riddle and he does nothing on the show except for be involved with fucking Alpha Academy. It's criminal to have Nikki Cross close the show, even though she's been a jobber for a year. That's just, it's malpractice. It's more booking malpractice from Triple H, man. I don't know. He was probably better off calling in some ringers from NXT to boost this show up a little bit. And I would do that too. Like, if you have some talent on NXT, and I think this would be a good way of utilizing jobber talent. If you have a guy like a Javier Bernal or somebody like that, who they're not an upper level NXT talent, you could use them as jobbers on the main roster. It won't really hurt them too much. A guy like, there's somebody else I was thinking of, but it wouldn't be, of course, like any of your North American champions or anybody you would consider giving that belt to, but somebody who was on the lower end of NXT. Call them in to do jobs for a guy like a Mustafa Ali or a guy like Chad Gable in order for those people to look good. And you can call it an NXT tryout and, whatever, so it won't look too bad. And, everybody will know that this is not a super high level NXT talent. But that would be a good use of talent. Like, yeah, you got guys like Reggie and Akira Tozawa that you could be jobbing those guys out, instead of beating Austin Theory and Mustafa Ali every fucking week and Chad Gable. Instead of beating those guys every week, use some of the undercard guys you have in shorter matches and then let these other people cut promos. I think Mustafa Ali is a better promo than most people. He's not a bad promo, but unless you actually let him cut his promos, he's not going to get over. And I don't think you got much with him anyway, even though I will say that he is not a bad promo. So this show sucked, and everybody knows that it sucked. And I don't think this is going to be like a regular occurrence for Triple H's his roster. I think this is mostly a filler episode as they try to keep everybody else from getting injured or anything like that as we slow march towards Crown Jewel. So hopefully when Crown Jewel is over, we'll get back to actual storytelling on these shows and doing stuff that matters. Until then, we're stuck where we're stuck with. So let me know what you guys think. Like, share, subscribe. I'll talk to you guys later. Peace.